Hey there, Sooner football fans. Welcome back to our game-by-game preview of the 2023 season here on the OU Insider YouTube channel. This is the Quick Slants series. That is Jesse Crittenden. I am Parker Thune, and today we come to game number 4 on Oklahoma's schedule. That would be a road tilt with the Cincinnati Bearcats. Now, the Sooners have been to Cincinnati before as part of a home-and-home series with the Bearcats in the Brian Kelly era. Oklahoma did win both of those games, although both of those games were relatively close. Now here in 2023, they'll face Cincinnati again as a conference opponent for the first and only time. They got to go to the state of Ohio, and it's been a long time, Jesse, since I was in the state of Ohio for any reason, let alone to cover a football game. So it should be an interesting trip up there. Going to have to grab some Skyline chili because apparently that's the thing. It's still a thing in 2023. I've not heard great things about it, but I'm going to give it a shot. As the Sooners prepare for battle with the Bearcats, obviously what happens over the first 3 games of the season is going to dictate a lot of how we feel in the moment about this matchup from both the OU side and the Cincinnati side. But one thing you can say about this team is that they're not the same program that went to the college football playoff in 2021 under Luke Fickell. A far cry, in fact, from the program that went unbeaten in that 2021 regular season.
Yeah, no kidding. And look, that's not to diminish last season. They had a decent season last year. Went 9-4. I think showed some promise on the defensive side of the ball. I think this is really an interesting way for OU to open conference play. Obviously, it's a new conference opponent to do it on the road. Obviously, the OU coming off a season last year that was really up and down. I think it's hard to know exactly what to expect from this matchup. There's not a lot of games between these two teams historically. They haven't seen each other, like you mentioned, in quite a while. And this is a Cincinnati team that went from one of the best teams in college football 2 years ago to a decent team last season. I think it's hard to know right now exactly what to expect from them in 2023.
They don't run the ball terribly well. You look at the numbers from last season for this program, they had 1,686 rushing yards as a team. Obviously, Eric Gray just about equaled that total by his lonesome for Oklahoma. So definitely a pass-heavy team. Ben Bryant returns to reprise his role as the starter in that offense. And what do you think the game plan is for Oklahoma against a team that's going to come out and more than likely try to throw based on the existing talent that they have on the roster and their overall scheme?
Yeah, no, I think if you're OU, you're going to be, that's exactly what you're going to be looking for. And Cincinnati's defense was really good. I mean, it was pretty good last year. They allowed just about 20 points a game. They were top 20 in defense. So, I mean, I think if you're OU, the focus going in is how are you going to be able to score on Cincinnati's defense. And I think as far as offensively, yeah, I mean, obviously OU, you and I have both talked about we're confident that, this secondary should be better from last year. They should have more depth. They should have more talent. However, Ben Bryant did prove last year that he can throw the ball a little bit. He posted some really good numbers. He's got experience in that system. He's got experience on the field. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you're OU defensively, I think you've got to make Cincinnati prove they can run the ball, considering all the struggles they had last season. I think you've got to sell out to stop the pass, make them run. And then, if they have some success, you adjust. But I think, at least for OU, this isn't super complicated. I think you know exactly what you want to do going into the game.
Now, as we look at some of the advanced metrics on this Cincinnati team from a season ago, how's this for a discrepancy? They only converted third downs at a 36% clip, but they were 65%, 13 for 20 on the year on fourth down conversions. So, given the struggles that Oklahoma's defense had getting off the field a year ago, are you more encouraged by that low conversion rate on third down, or are you more apprehensive given Cincinnati's high success rate on fourth down?
Yeah, I don't know if it's easy to be super excited about either. I mean, considering OU was bad, the OU's defense was bad at both defending third and fourth downs last season. And I also think we're seeing an overall trend in college football of teams being more aggressive on fourth downs just in general. And I also think we saw last year that OU's opponents really weren't scared to go for it on particularly on fourth downs last season. So I think again, I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup for OU's defense. I think this is a Cincinnati team that likes to play aggressive. They like to throw the ball around. I don't think they're going to be scared to go for it on third and fourth downs. I do think, I mean, all things considered, again, I mean, Cincinnati coming off a 9-4 season last year, I think in a lot of ways, this is going to be a pretty interesting opener for conference play for OU to do it on the road against this kind of team. I think it's an interesting matchup.
Nippert Stadium is not a terribly daunting venue, seats about 40,000, but it's going to be a different environment than the one that the Sooners play in the previous week up in Green Country against Tulsa. Cincinnati's got a rather fervent football fan base that has had some glory days in very recent memory to live off of. So do you worry at all about this maybe being the first real road test for Oklahoma in 2023 and how they respond?
Yeah, a little bit. And I do think, I mean, I think with Cincinnati being with being a new team in the conference, I think they're going to be anxious to prove themselves right away. Obviously, Oklahoma, despite how tough last season was, is still a high caliber opponent that I think Cincinnati is going to be. I mean, it's Cincinnati's first Big 12 game too, obviously. So I think despite, like you mentioned, Cincinnati maybe not being one of the most high profile stadiums in the country, I think they do have a pretty passionate fan base, and I think they're going to be pretty pumped to be playing their first Big 12 game. OU last season, we saw them struggle on the road. So yeah, I mean, I think even Cincinnati, if they didn't have the season last year they did in 2021, they still had a decent season last year. So this is certainly not an easy opponent, and I do think this could be an easy slip up for Oklahoma if they're not careful.
You had to pick one. You think this game is won on offense or on defense for OU?
I think this is a game that OU wins offensively. I think that's going to be the matchup, or that's OU's going to have to score to win this game, which sounds obvious. But when you play a defense like Cincinnati, they have talent coming back this season. I think they were really good last year, especially down the stretch. Defensively, I mean, a lot of I think they held some high profile offenses in check. So I'm not as concerned about OU's defense. Obviously, I mean, I think Cincinnati's going to have some success passing the ball, but I think OU and Brent Venables are going to make this Cincinnati offense one-dimensional. I think that's an easy game plan going in. I do think the pressure is going to be on Dillon Gabriel and Jeff Lebby and this offense to score points. I think the worst thing you could do is allow Cincinnati's offense to get some rhythm, and then if OU's offense can't respond, can't answer, that defense gets momentum. I do think that could put OU in some trouble.
Now we're 3 months away from this football game, so I'm going to ask you this question. If you nail it, we'll spend the entire week after this football game is played patting you on the back, and if you're dead wrong, we'll disavow any knowledge that this conversation ever happened. But pick an MVP. Who do you think shines for OU against Cincinnati, and why?
Oh man, that's a good question. I honestly think this is gonna be a prime opportunity for Dillon Gabriel, which sounds obvious. He's the quarterback, but I think this is going to be the type of game on the road. OU is going to have a lot of young role players, or this is going to be the first opportunity for a lot of OU skill position players to be playing in a big game, to be playing in a conference game against a new opponent on the road. I think this is the type of game that, if you're rolling with Dillon Gabriel, obviously all the Jackson Arnold stuff aside, if you're rolling with Dillon Gabriel going into next season, you need his veteran leadership. You need his experience on the field. I think this is a prime game for Dillon Gabriel to lead this OU offense. So I think if OU comes out on top, I think it's going to be because Dillon Gabriel has had one of his better games in an OU uniform.
Yeah, well, and Dillon Gabriel, having played in the AAC for UCF, probably has some familiarity with at least a few of those defenders that'll suit up for Cincinnati. OU Cincinnati, September 23rd, Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati, Ohio. The very first game for Oklahoma in the new Big 12, which is going to be a one-year cameo for the Sooners in the new Big 12. But if nothing else, they get to see Cincinnati, they get to see UCF, and they get to see BYU in a conference setting at least once before they set sail for the SEC. We will be back on this channel next week to preview the Sooners matchup with Iowa State as they come back home at the end of the month to take on the Cyclones, a team that they obviously beat rather handily up in Ames a year ago. Until then, for Jesse Crittenden, I am Parker Thune. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out all the content over at ouinsider.com. We'll see you next time.